Gary, how much is this the ideal sort of game to have at this stage of the season when, in theory, some might say you've got not a lot else to play for? Derby's perfect, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Looking forward to it because it's. I never just like to see a season out anyway with nothing to play for, and we've certainly got a couple of real good home games to come. Forest Green, which is our local cup final, and obviously Coventry. It'll means a lot to Coventry, and they'll bring a big crowd down. I'm sure they're going to need to win that game because they're still in the hunt. Will they? Won't they? But so yeah, I'm always pleased there's things to play for come the end of the season. But none more important than your local cup final.
And do you see it that way as a cup final? Because obviously, after the game back in November at the New Lawn was a draw, it's bragging rights, fully up for grabs now, isn't it?
Yeah, I suppose so. I mean, bragging rights don't bother me that much, sort of thing. But obviously, it's a supporters' game, isn't it? The bragging rights for the supporters when they live locally in the area and etc. etc. But it's a game that it's always healthy rivalry, and it's kept us focused. It definitely kept us focused, and we want to try and win the game. Now, obviously, from our point of view, it's 3 points, but from their point of view, it's a massive game as well because of they're pretty close to the relegation teams. Certainly, they're in that little bunch, and they're going to need to get out of it. So, I'm sure it'll be a keenly contested game, and we need to. We want to win the game. There's no doubt about that. And as I say, I keep saying you could easily say, well, it's not cup final and all that, but I just think it is for the area.
And also, how useful is it for you, for the players you want for next season, looking ahead to see how they'll perform in that sort of big game environment?
Yeah, I mean, you get a few things that come up, a few scenarios where you have to be aware of the players that have been offered something and haven't come back yet. So you have to think about that, whether they are involved, and sometimes there are players that are here for another year anyway in contract, and they, as far as they're concerned, need to perform because that will stop me going out getting someone that might be ahead of them, and then you've got just the last one of just a few that are still competing for an offer, and so there's all those scenarios at the end of the season, and what you want to do is try and pick your team, the team that you know are right up for it, and they're playing for the football club and not for somebody in the stand.
I know you only play them twice in the league a season anyway, but have you had to pay a little bit less attention to Forest Green this season than you did 2 years ago when you were competing for the National League title?
What do you mean?
In terms of preparing for the games, sort of because they were your main rivals for promotion 2 years ago, do you almost sort of look more at them then than this season where, sort of you've been further apart?
No, we're looking just as much because you owe it to the other teams that are in the relegation zone to do your best, to make sure you prepare properly, and we wouldn't do it any other way anyway, even if it's the last game of the season. There'd be reasons why you pick certain people at the last games of the season, but no, we've prepared very thoroughly again, and we've had to because they're pretty much a different team now. Between myself, Tim Bell and Russell, we do a lot of work on the opposition, and players have started responding to the information they receive. That's the big thing. You can watch a team and think, well, these are their strengths and weaknesses, but you've got to have players that can get at their weaknesses and be aware of their strengths.
How big is the decision on George Lloyd, whether to keep him in for a second game or whether you sort of protect him? Because obviously, sometimes with a young player, dropping them back out of the team after they've made their debut, it's a really difficult one, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, because you got to think of the players' feelings sometimes, you know. But at the same time, it's all experience, and that's the big thing that these lads get. So if he's in the team, then that's experience in itself. If he's not in the team, that's another experience that you have to deal with. But of course, anyone you leave out the team, you don't just leave them out the team. You have a chat with him, you explain why, you give him the reasons, etc. But you know, he'd be very unlucky to be left out of the team after a 3-0 win. But who knows? You know, we haven't picked the team yet. As when we have these discussions, it's always a Thursday when we haven't really selected our first 11 yet.
And I suppose a lot of it depends on the fitness of Kevin Dawson and Carl Winchester. How are they?
Yeah, well, again, it's early days. They were injuries that could recover in days as opposed to weeks. So I'm hoping that you know, they'll both be fit and healthy and ready to be selected.